Anasi dismounted from the horse when she saw an older woman with a large gourd of sour milk balanced on her head walking towards her. "Hello, my daughter. What is your name?" asked the woman. "I am Anasi from the Ampu clan. My mother, I am looking for Tiko's homestead," she answered. The old woman raised her eyebrows, removed the gourd from her head, and placed it on her left hip and leaned forward. "All the way from Ampu, you say? Well, the gods have led you right to your destination because you have arrived," said the woman while gesturing at the hedge. Anasi had seen the hedge, but it was so thick and tall that she couldn't tell what lay beyond it. "Just walk down the hill and you will see the gate," the old woman said. But before Anasi could thank her, the old woman added, "It is good you have come to see them. You see, the rumor is," she leaned even closer to Anasi, "a night walker has been paying too many visits to their compound. The poor girl can hardly sleep in the hut her father built for her. I swear, that girl has lost too much weight. The wind might soon pick her up and fling her into the lake. So, what's your business with the old man Tiko?" Anasi's grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "You never tell your business to strangers when your business is a magical affair." Now, how was she supposed to answer the old woman when her question was still hanging in the air? Just as she was about to utter an ambiguous answer, a harsh, frantic call from a weaver bird high in the tall trees cut through the rustle of the evening breeze. They both looked up in the direction of the noise. "A weaver bird? Restless when the sun is about to go to sleep? How curious. Must be a snake trying to get to its eggs," said the old woman contemplatively. Noticing the opportunity fate had laid before her, Anasi said rather politely, "Good evening, my mother." Then she pulled on the horse's reins and heightened her pace down the hill. Behind her, the woman began to speak again, but Anasi didn't stop. She had work to do. She pulled the reins and urged her horse forward. Her horse snorted. "Yes, I know, Avarisa, but we do have a lot of work ahead of us," she said to her horse as she rubbed it between its eyes. The farther downhill she went, the more the vast valley before her revealed itself. The red glow of the evening sun danced between the gaps of the moving clouds. In the distance, at the bottom of the valley, two excited little boys guided a large herd of cattle towards her, away from the open green pastures. In the distance, she could see several homesteads with hedges peppered all over the valley below. Finally, she found the gate to Tiko's compound. Crocodile and python totems were expertly carved into its wooden planks. When she touched the gate, it creaked a little, but it felt heavy and secure. Somewhere inside the compound, a dog barked. A chorus of barks from other dogs followed and grew louder as the pack ran closer to the gate. A man's voice gave out an order, and the barking commotion stopped instantly. The wooden door creaked open, revealing an old but strong man wearing a robe and a wide-brimmed hat. She could now see the compound. A well-manicured path started from the gate to the entrance of the main house. 3 houses stood on both sides of the main house. One house, which was standing right next to the main house on the left side, had several wooden planks planted around it. "My daughter," said the old man as he walked up to her, "are you the one I was expecting?" He spoke with authority, but she could still feel the kindness in his voice. "I am, my father," she answered as she bowed her head before him. "Then do not stand out there any longer. Welcome, we will water your horse." As she walked in, she could see the massive cattle enclosure. An old woman seated on a stool, milking a goat next to the goat pen adjacent to the cattle enclosure, waved at her. "That is my wife. She comes from your clan. We can walk over and talk to her if you want," the old man offered. But the sun's light was now just a haze in the sky, yet she needed to draw emblems and perform rituals before the night. "Where is the hut where your daughter sleeps?" She sleeps in her mother's hut, but she shared that hut over there with her little brothers before. He cleared his voice. Before the night walker. He was pointing at the hut with wooden planks planted around it. She grabbed the sack on her horse's back. Don't worry about your horse. We have a comfortable area prepared for him. He beckoned at one of the men who was chopping wood in front of one of the houses. That is my second son. He's a skilled horseman. He will take good care of your horse. You must join us for our evening meal, he said. My father, I have to draw sigils in your daughter's hut and conduct some rituals. Tell her she is sleeping in the hut tonight. I'll be here to protect her. She thanked the old man, slung the sack onto her back, and walked towards the hut. The old man was right behind her. My daughter, this particular night walker is not normal. We have consulted several shamans before you. They all failed. Some even ran away without taking any payment. I have 6 sons. She is my only daughter. In just a few years, she will have suitors, but she may not get married if the night walker problem continues, he said. That is why I invited your grandfather. My grandfather sends his apologies, she said, looking down. He had business with the king, but do not worry, my father. I am a keen student of my grandfather, she said. Of course, my daughter. Now you must meet your charge, he said. Yes, but she must eat first, because once she enters her room, she is not going out until the night ends, Anasi said. He nodded and walked back to the gate where the 2 little boys she had seen before were guiding cattle into the compound. Reaching the hut, she noticed that the poles planted around it had crocodile and python totems carved vertically along their lengths. The previous shamans probably had no idea what they were doing, she thought to herself. Once she entered the hut, she lit a lamp, drew protection sigils on the walls, and painted her fingers and lips with black paint. Then she went outside to pour libation. By now, the light of the full moon was taking over after the sun. After checking on her horse, she went back to the hut to wait for the girl. A few minutes later, the girl came to the hut accompanied by her father and her little brothers. The old man paused at the door and inspected the sigils on the walls. He smiled faintly and nodded. Kina, this is the shaman I told you about. Introduce yourself. Anasi could see the girl was barely 16, but she wasn't thin at all. She was smiling, but the light of the lamp revealed the tiredness and dimness in her eyes. Hello, my sister. My name is Kina, the girl said without looking directly at the shaman. My name is Anasi, daughter of Ambrua, of the clan of Ampu. Today, my sister, I have come to see to your problems, Anasi said reassuringly and calmly, almost hoping that it would restore the glint to the poor girl's eyes. When the father and his sons were gone, Anasi spoke candidly to the girl. The night walker won't know I am here. He'll sense only you. That means he'll be bolder than he has ever dared to be, because he'll think you're alone. Anasi asked Kina to sit before her. Now, Kina, I'm about to draw sigils on your chest and neck for your protection. Do you understand? Asked Anasi. The girl nodded. Anasi scooped out dark, sludgy ink from a pot with her fingers and began to draw sigils on the girl. I saw your mother milking goats today. Do you have a goat? The girl answered that her mother promised her a kid if the goats gave birth this season. They went on chatting about last season's harvest and the kind of horses Anasi dreamt of owning. After some time, Anasi noticed that her charge was tired and might need to sleep. Go ahead and get some rest, my little sister, said Anasi. It didn't take long for the girl to fall into a deep sleep. Everyone had gone to sleep except Anasi. Only the sound of cattle chewing cud, the noise of crickets, and the random bark of a dog kept her company. She decided to go outside and stretch her legs. But when she was outside, she saw that the moon was at its highest point. She rushed back into the hut, closed and secured the door, and sat and waited. It was midnight. Now, Anasi had captured several night walkers before her grandfather handed her this assignment. While she no longer felt the excitement of night walker jobs, she never took any of her assignments lightly. Then, all of a sudden, all she could hear was silence. No noises of crickets, cud-chewing cows, or barking dogs. Just cold, deafening silence. The lamp's flame began to flicker. "He is here," she whispered to herself. She pulled a broom out of her sack, said incantations, then laid it on the floor in front of her. She waited. A gust of wind blew at the lamp, plunging the entire hut into darkness, leaving only the moonlight peeking through gaps around and under the wooden door. Anasi found this puzzling, but she shrugged it off. Anasi was still waiting when Kina shot up, gasping from her deep sleep. At the same moment, a heavy shuffling of feet sounded in the distance, magnified by the deafening silence. She reached out in the dark and patted the girl's shoulder to calm her down. Then she pressed her finger on the girl's lip to keep her quiet. Someone touched the door. This bold action by the night walker indicated to Anasi that he could only sense Kina's presence. Anasi said incantations, then struck a piece of flint against her steel dagger over the broom until it caught fire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then somebody kicked the door forcefully, sending a gust of wind from under the door, which put out the flames. Anasi could hear the girl sobbing uncontrollably. She tried to calm Kina down, but then the girl started shivering violently until her entire body went limp in Anasi's arms. The girl must have fainted out of fear, Anasi thought. She knew the night walker had not sensed a shaman in the room, because so far his antics had no effect on her. Anasi grabbed a small gourd from her sack and poured its contents on the partly burnt broom as she said incantations. Then, while standing over the broom, she struck the flint against her steel dagger. Sparks jumped from the knife, and the moment they tied the broom, it burst into flames. But again, a random gust of wind put out the flames like nothing. For the first time that night, Anasi felt a flicker of unease. What kind of night walker is this? She thought. Never in her experience had a night walker been able to endure a broom set on fire. Every time she had done this ritual, the night walker would be petrified instantly. Kina was still immobile on her sleeping mat. As Anasi puzzled over what had just happened, something started tapping lightly on the door. Gentle wiping taps that sounded unnatural. What an annoying cretin, she thought. She lit the lamp again, checked on the girl, and reached into her sack. Her fingers found the familiar bundle, stiff hide bound tight with leather strips. She pulled it out, worked the knots loose with her thumb, and unrolled the mat across the dirt floor. The bones lay nested in its center, pale and waiting. She used the white paint in one of her pots to paint patterns on her face. Then she scooped the bones with both palms and flung them onto the mat. What is this? A great river with a small outlet? What is that supposed to mean? She asked herself. She threw the lots again and again and got the same answer every time. Just as she was about to try one more time, the lamp went off again. The distant shuffling began. What kind of magic is this? She was puzzled. She had to take drastic measures. So, she fished out a wooden figurine shaped in the image of a man and 7 nails from a separate bag in her sack. Sorry, grandfather, but I have to stop this cruel dance, she thought. After saying incantations, she pushed the first nail into the figurine, and Kina suddenly sat up screaming. Anasi was puzzled. This isn't supposed to affect Kina, she thought. She wasn't sure whether to drive in another nail, but she did it anyway. This time, 2 screams rent through the air. Kina's loud and piercing scream inside the hut, and a man's roar of agony outside. Footsteps rushed towards the house. She drove another nail. Kina screamed. A man groaned outside. Before she could drive a fourth nail, a powerful whirlwind rose from the floor, picked her up, and flung her flat onto the ground. Her entire body was paralyzed. Again, there was a heavy shuffling of feet, followed by slight unnatural taps on the door. And then something stranger started to happen. Fear flowed from the soles of her feet towards her torso. Her body was succumbing to the fear. Her ears started ringing loudly, and her body trembled with fear. She screamed the name of an ancestor and uttered an incantation. Out of nowhere, she heard the loud calls of a weaver bird. The little bird perched onto her forehead and started singing while flapping its wings. Slowly but steadily, the ringing in her ears stopped as the bird continued to sing. As the bird's song got louder, a powerful force lifted her to her feet. Before her, the beautiful orange rays of the evening sun shone over a vast grassland. A giant baobab tree stood beside a mighty river. She felt energized. "Look," the voice of a man said beside her. She turned her head in the direction of the voice. It was a young man wearing an indigo robe. His gaze was fixed in front of him, and he was pointing at the mighty river. "Look," he persisted. She looked at the river for a second time. It was flowing in no particular direction. She tracked the currents to a point where the river narrowed into a stream. "Is the stream the source of the river, or is the river flowing into the stream?" the man asked. She turned to face him, but he kept his gaze in front of him, while his finger persistently pointed at the river. A stream cannot be the source of a river, and the river cannot flow into a... She finally grasped what the bones had been telling her. She knew what was going on, and it set her ablaze with righteous fury. She looked back at the room. Kina was still laying on her back, held hostage by a trance she could not escape. Anasi knew she had to break the foul link, and she knew how to do it. "Kina, rise and join me," Anasi called from her position in the spiritual plane. Kina's body convulsed for a few moments, then her spirit gently rose from her body and walked to Anasi and the ancestor. Anasi held her hands and said, "Do not fear." At that moment, Kina and Anasi both woke up from the trance. Anasi lit the lamp again and smiled at the now awake Kina. She pulled out a smoking pipe out of her sack, shoved some dry herbs into it, and lit it with the lamp's flame. "Kina, smoke this." Kina hesitated, but at the encouragement of Anasi, she grabbed the pipe and deeply sucked in the smoke from the herbs. "Now, hold my hand. I have a bone to pick tonight," said Anasi. The light went out almost on cue. Then there was heavy shuffling, but this time it had no effect on Kina. Someone outside ran to the hut and kicked the door so hard that the top part of the door leaned in. Anasi could hear the individual outside backing away from the hut, preparing to kick down the door a second time. So she grabbed the half-burned broom, and as the pounding of feet on dry earth moved closer to the house, she swept the floor in front of her feet with the broom and readied her knife and flint. The second kick was so powerful that it sent part of the wooden lock flying across the room. As he approached the door a third time, she flung the broom onto the floor, and just as he kicked in the door, she struck the flint on her knife and the broom burst into flames. The moon's light spilled into the room as the entire door collapsed into the hut in front of the women. But the aggressor collapsed on his back away from the broken door. He had been petrified. "Hold my hand, Kina. Whatever happens next, do not move and show respect." Anasi had seen the 2 points of light among the crowns of the tall trees near the gate. Her heart pounded relentlessly when slowly the 2 points of light moved away from the shadows, revealing the 2 eyes of a giant snake under the moonlight. The python looked down in the direction of the hut and paused for a moment. Then, with unnatural speed, it slithered to the hut and grabbed the petrified man laying at the door with its mouth. Both women were trembling uncontrollably as the eye of the snake peered at them through the door. It was a kind but glaring stare. The snake blinked slightly, then slithered away with great speed in the direction of the gate and disappeared into the shadows. "What was that?" asked Kina. "That is one angry totem. For months, the greedy fool has been using your power to blind the totem protecting you at this compound." "Yes, Kina, you are a mage. He used you as a shield to blind your totem so no one would know he was stealing your powers. He was using your own power against me all along until I broke the link between you two. The totem will hold him hostage until his people plead with your father to spare him. Now sleep. Tomorrow is a bright new day." The end. Hello friends. I hope you liked the story. I wrote it within 4 days. I really didn't have enough time to edit it, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. Please share, like, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Goodbye and good luck.